Welcome back to Brazil Crypto Report. Today I'm joined by Luiz Hadad, who's the author of the Sherlock Communications 2024 Blockchain LatAm Report. We talk about Luiz's research into crypto and blockchain adoption across Latin America, regulatory developments, and key trends to observe in 2024. All right, so I'm joined here by Luiz Hadad, who's a researcher and blockchain advisor at Sherlock Communications. Luiz, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Aaron. It's a great pleasure to participate in your podcast.
Awesome. And I know you're dialing in from Hawaii, so I appreciate you taking a break from surfing to hang out with us here. So how's the weather out there?
Yeah, it's a great pleasure sharing a bit of the aloha spirit from Hawaii. The weather today is not that great, but we got some really good waves in the past 2 days, and it's been a pleasure to participate with you and share a little bit of the insights from the report.
Awesome. Yeah. So you're the primary author of the blockchain LatAm report that Sherlock Communications puts out every year. I think you've done it for 4 or 5 years now, and it's really the most comprehensive just look at kind of a bird's eye view of all the main countries in Latin America, kind of what's happening in the crypto ecosystems, what's happening on the regulatory front. You guys do a survey as well where you're talking to, have different questions you're asking folks. It's a pretty impressive piece of work. So congratulations on doing that. I know these things are not, easy to do. So congratulations on that. But I would love, before we dive into this year's study, which was just released a couple of weeks ago, just wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself quick. Kind of who are you, and what was your road into crypto, and what are you focusing on now?
Thank you. Well, I started in crypto in 2017. Initially, I went to blockchain coffee workshop, got into it, and really fell down the crypto rabbit hole. Then I sold a percentage of a startup that I had, and I was lucky enough to ask for the payment form to be in Bitcoin. At the time, Bitcoin was trading at 6K. It was the bull run of 2017, ended up with, 16 or 18K at the time. So it was like, wow, this industry looks, promising. And then I was, for a couple of years, I was the head of community of Ethereum Rio, an EOS block producer. And that gave me a lot of understanding of the general crypto industry. This was during the ICO frenzy in 2017. I was able to, learn a lot from global leaders. Been to the Silicon Valley a couple of times. I already participated on hosting a couple conferences in Rio, the Rio Blockchain Conference, which was the first conference in Museum of Tomorrow. And then I helped with Ethereum Rio on both editions. After Ethereum Rio, I went for investment on the investment side, looking for impact investments. Then I went, that didn't go that well. And then I went to Cambiatus, which is a complementary currency platform. And at that time that I was in Cambiatus, it was the beginning of refi. So that's where I focus a lot of my work today on building stuff. It's building on refi initiatives. Muda is a social currency that I work that has more than 5,000 members in Brazil and creates a lot of positive impact. And after, I think after in the 2020, after the pandemic, we started doing the Sherlock Communications report. And it was funny because the reason why I got hired into Sherlock was because I have a background in law. I graduated in law, and at the time, one of the managing partners needed someone to do compliance of their clients. So make sure that everyone that was actually coming to their agency were, cool projects, and that, we wouldn't have any problems with it. It turned out that the first client was already a fraud. So I busted them. I got, it was funny. I found, this white paper is not looking so cool. And then I found, somewhere in the Philippines that they got, they had some legal action against them. So I was like, maybe we should not work with those guys and, find a breach of contract. So that's how I got their trust. And it was quite funny because, we know crypto is an industry that you actually need to do this compliance work. And then from there, we're like, yeah, nice. So let's do an overview about the blockchain ecosystem in Latin America, because there's so much cool things happening. So that's where we started. Right now, I'm also part of NARSDAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization that supports extreme sports athletes. I'm a free surfer, so NARS supports a bit of my work, and it's also keeps me up with all the new trends, like how to manage a DAO, how to participate on a DAO, and all the new stuff in the ecosystem. So it's a pleasure to be here. It's great to. I'm also advisor in few initiatives like Play for Change, Canacoin. So I try to spread a lot of the experience that I had in the coming years with the most people I can in the ecosystem. I'm passionate about refi, so yeah, I think we can use our industry to do some good instead of only people trying to accumulate wealth. So I think trying to be a bit different.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, well, I mean, who needs to hire Chainalysis when they can just hire you, right? You're you're sleuthing out scams and all these kind of things.
Yeah,
but
Chainalysis is good. Like we use them a lot as a source, but I think I try to bring different perspectives. Like I think the biggest challenge in this report is about content curation, because there's a lot of probably more than anyone else that there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of news about crypto, but actually curating what's really worth showing to the audience and what's important, what are the real insights, and how we can draw perspectives from it. I think this is the hardest work that we do in this report. So it's actually trying to take out the noise and pretty much cherry pick what's actually worth showing out to decision makers that are willing to enter in Latin America.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely. I me's that's a challenge universal to across crypto, but I think especially with when you're dealing with different languages, it's if you're not a native speaker of Portuguese or Spanish, like you just don't know like what's legit and what's not, right? It's very difficult to so it's helpful. You need somebody like kind of on the ground who sort of knows this stuff that you can confide in, and a trustworthy resource. So it's super valuable what you're doing. So I was hoping we kind of just dive in and go through some of the main points of the report, some of the main findings, and maybe we'll just go through like alphabetically, since that's how you classified it in the report. But like Argentina's been a big country. I mean, there's a lot of interest in Argentina now, especially with the new president. I just had a podcast a couple of weeks ago with Michael Casey, who was used to be the chief content officer at CoinDesk, and his whole basically he spent 6 years in Argentina during the 2000s covering financial crises and stuff at the Wall Street Journal, and that was basically his like red pill moment into like why you need a currency that can be trusted independent of government, and that was his his start in the Bitcoin rabbit hole. We've heard a lot about Argentina in the last few months post the Milei election, and just kind of wondering like what was your main takeaways from Argentina, and what is maybe like the vibe in Argentina at this point in time, just given the new Milei government?
I would say that the main word for Argentina right now is hope, because crypto is actually bringing hope to Argentinians in general. Hope because of their internal context with the election of Milei, of having sort of a crypto-friendly president, but also hope on the macro context on crypto. We're at the start of a bull market. Argentina. I'll just take one step back from Argentina, but Argentina is going to be the main context in what I'm going to say, because we usually have two types of adoption in Latin America. And one of this type is the adoption by opportunity, and the other one is the adoption by necessity. So Argentina and Venezuela are the two main countries in which we have the adoption by necessity case. So, which means that if you have high inflation rates and or a high distrust level in your government, you're ending up trusting crypto and dealing with all the difficulties of getting people onboarded, not having a clear regulation, but you're not really caring about all this friction, because at the end of the day, saving your money, protecting your assets from inflation, and your currency devaluation, those things go hand in hand. But doing that at the end of the day, it's more important. And a lot of people, they help you they are actually going to help your onboarding process, because they all know what it is to suffer 100% inflation in a year, right? So Argentina and it's a pity, because Venezuela, for example, has a really high adoption rate, but we actually don't have numbers to prove it. Like right now, Brazil is, let's say, the leader in adoption in Latin America, but mostly because we can trust the numbers that come from Brazil. But I think if we had the actual numbers in Venezuela, Venezuela would be, at least in the top three. Like it would be Brazil, Argentina, and Venezuela, according to the Chainalysis report. So I think, going back to Argentina, I think what we have there is hope for a brighter future, because we have this combination of a government that is actually proposing friendlier regulation. They are seeing new ways of dealing with old problems, like their debit crisis, right? For example, when we look at El Salvador issuing Bitcoin bonds, if that goes well, it might be an opportunity for Argentina also, right? What we're seeing with Brazil creating their own central bank digital currency and pretty much willing to tokenize its whole economy, willing to lower transaction costs and willing to lower the cost of credit for small business owners. That could also work for Argentina if it goes well in Brazil. And I think what Argentina has that is very special is that Argentina has a very talented developer community. Argentinians, they figured out that they could export their talent in IT, and they could develop their own solutions. So we actually have really high skilled developers in Argentina because of their challenges. We also have high skilled builders in Argentina. When we look at Ripio, when we look at Lemon Cash, when we look at, there's a lot of initiatives in Argentina that are really succeeding, So I think hope is the main word that I see. But also, I think when we mix grassroots adoption, highly talented developer community, and friendly regulations, I think that's a fertile ground for an ecosystem to grow. We're just lacking the regulation part in Argentina. But as soon as we have that, and let's be honest, like the crypto community really is not really compliant with the regulations all the time. Like we are compliant, but we are innovators, so we sort of do things regardless. We have this permissionless ethos in our industry, so we don't ask questions like, is this allowed? We just go there and start building things. And that's how the Argentinian community has been doing for a while. But I think like when we have clear regulations, that's going to help a lot of the institutional money to actually come to the crypto ecosystem in Argentina. And then we're going to see change in a more structural way. That's what I meant, right?
I mean, one of the questions I've been thinking about, because I've just been thinking a lot about Argentina, even just the last couple of weeks, just due to some other, just been in the news a bit, and I've had some friends who have been asking me about it. So, but like the thing I keep thinking about is, what happens when, perhaps to use your framing of it, which is good, like the necessity, it becomes not a necessity anymore. Now it's just an opportunity, right? Like say Malay does, magically cure, hyperinflation and currency devaluation and all this kind of stuff, and it's, a normal functioning financial system again. Does everyone in Argentina just be like, hey, great, we can go back to using pesos again? Or or are they like just going to be like, hey, we've started using this crypto thing, like this seems to be better than this in so many different ways, like let's just keep using it? Like, is it? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What would be your take on that? Like, is like, can the genie be put back in the bottle here, or is this just going to keep growing and growing, either irrespective of how the macroeconomic future looks for Argentina?
Well, I think when people realize the crypto ethos, that idea of a zeitgeist, right? So when the crypto culture and the ethos is already out there, it's really hard to put the genius back in the bottle. I'm pretty positive about that, and I think. Well, I really hope that Milei can do that to the Argentine economy. Although I think he can do that a lot faster with crypto as a infrastructure, or some sort of background to it, because Argentina has so much talent. It has really great potential for crypto, for mining, crypto operations. But what I think is that the culture of the country is already being shaped in a certain way that is going to be really hard. I don't think they'll ever go back, because we're also seeing the rates of adoption growing globally, right? So if you are one of the leaders in this movement, why would you go back, right? You can just keep moving forward and leapfrog some sort of difficulties that you would have to get back into the financial system, and just plug your economy into this new financial system that is being redesigned by pretty much the crypto community. So I think what Argentina, and because Argentina is not actually being the first mover in things like, for example, El Salvador was the first mover in Latin America regarding having Bitcoin as legal tender. Brazil is being the first mover in regards to tokenizing its economy and doing the digital real and plugging it into the EVM compatible chain. So Argentina will have the benefit of watching the experiments beforehand and saying, hey, this was tested in Brazil, I can adapt this to my context. Or Bitcoin as a legal tender is being tested in El Salvador. Maybe I'm not going to do that way. I'm going to do in a different way. So I think Argentina is well positioned in that case. And it's just a matter of not getting in the way of builders and developers. It's just like having clear regulations and allowing them, to keep building. And of course, if you have clear regulations, you're going to have institutional money. And I think this is the biggest change since I started doing the reports in Latin America. Like, for now, we can actually say that institutional investors and big organizations, they are into crypto. Like, there's no turning back to it. Like in Brazil, we're seeing a lot of traditional banks, just jumping into crypto. The Bitcoin ETF in America. So this is
even just yesterday, there's news that that Itaú had flown in Michael Saylor to come talk to their clients about Bitcoin. And it's like, it doesn't get any better than that, right? But you made an interesting point about Argentina in that they're kind of, they haven't necessarily been the first mover in some of these aspects, so they can kind of sit back and watch a little bit. And sometimes it's better to be like, it's better to not necessarily be the first. Like, you want to be among the first, but you don't necessarily want to be the first sometimes, because you can kind of see and like observe, okay, like what did these guys get right? What did they get wrong? How can we do it differently, do it better? So there's definitely some advantages to that. So I like how you're framing Argentina in this context. I think they're well positioned there. moving on to, I want to touch quickly on Chile, because there's one stat that you highlight in the report that I thought was pretty interesting, which is that they have a pretty massive adoption of like WorldCoin. They had something like 1% of the population signed up for like world IDs and had their eyeball scanned and everything. Which anyway, I wasn't expecting to see that, but I don't know. Well, any context on like why Chile loves WorldCoin so much, or what's the deal there?
What I found about that is that it was basically a marketing strategy from WorldCoin that gained traction in a Chilean city. So, and they highlighted that into a press release. But I don't know. I think a lot of projects when they come to Latin America, they just want to showcase some stats, and they boost rewards for the first the first guys to adopt it. So that's pretty much it. Like Chile is actually one of the countries with lowest adoption rates because there's not so much inflation there, and what happens in Chile is more of people actually investing in crypto seeking for alpha, so seeking for higher risk return rates. And a cool thing in Chile is that they have some pretty nice projects like endangered tokens and double build, which is endangered tokens, a refi project that use NFTs to help conservation initiatives, and double build is a project that goes toward tokenizing real estate in Chile. So there's a lot of local initiatives tokenizing real estate in each country, and it's kind of hard because you have the local regulations, so you got to get through that. So yeah, what I might take from Chile is that they also have a really skilled developer community, great builders, but there's still a lot to reach this adoption rate in terms of necessity, because the Chile economy, they go kind of well when we talk about Latin America. So I don't think they had this sort of spark of necessity. And yeah,
that makes sense. I mean, Chile is kind of held up as the one maybe like kind of highly functioning economy in Latin America, right? Or like it's a OECD country. It's among kind of like the club of like rich countries. They've kind of earned that status. So there's not necessarily like the usage and adoption in is the same there as it might be in like a European country, a European Union country or something. Basically,
I have developed sort of a thesis while doing this research. I'm not sure if you've heard of the Innovators Dilemma from Clayton Christensen. It's a really awarded book by a guy who studied innovation, and Clayton Christensen, he studied disruptive innovation and incremental innovation, right? So basically, when we have incremental innovation, it's, let's say, going from iPhone 14 to iPhone 15. You're actually improving something that was already good, while a disruptive innovation would go, I don't know, maybe the VR thing, or not using phones anymore. And what happens in Latin America, and this disruptive innovation is highly attached to your RPV, so your resources, your processes, and your values, right? So when things are going right, for example, in Chile, economy is going all right. They don't have big inflation issues. So economy is going all right, you don't have a lot of incentives to go towards a disruptive innovation, especially in your economy, right? You're just going to grow incrementally. But when things are not that good, when we see El Salvador, for example, or Argentina, that's when you're going to rely on a disruptive innovation like crypto. So I'm sort of still getting, this touch. But every year I do the research, I see that where we have more space to grow in regards of disruptive crypto innovations applied to a nation state is where we have the biggest challenges, or things are not going that well. Brazil might be the only exception to this rule, but even though Brazil still have economic challenges and is not as good as it could be, so it's
Yeah, it's an interesting point that with a country like Argentina or El Salvador, it's kind of like, well, like what do you got to lose, right? Like, why not just try this thing? Because if it doesn't work, then like you're not necessarily any worse off than you were when you started, right? Where with Brazil, it's like, okay, you're a little more in the middle, and it's like, okay, like if this whole Drex thing like doesn't work, for example, then maybe that's a setback, right? But in Chile, if they move to do something like this, like, okay, like it's already pretty well functioning, like there's not really a need to rock the boat heavily. There's a little bit more there's more risk there to the downside is higher basically if it doesn't work,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like,
and even Drex is more of an incremental innovation than actually a disruptive innovation, right? Like when we look at El Salvador issuing Bitcoin bonds, that's disruptive, And why would you do that? Well, El Salvador does not have its own central bank. El Salvador has trouble with the IMF. Not trouble, but the relationship with the IMF is not that good. And when you look at the IMF guidances to either El Salvador or Argentina, first thing they say is you guys should stop crypto. Argentina was going in a path. Yeah, Argentina was going in a path before Milei, where they had like this guidance from the IMF to stop allowing banks to let their customers get access to crypto because that could cause instability in their economy. While we from the research we're seeing that people are actually using crypto to get access to crypto dollars, which are stable coins, and actually protect their assets from inflation. It was not causing economic downturn or anything. People are actually just protecting their savings at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, following that same logic, it's like, the IMF should be telling Argentina to, just crack down on people using dollars, right? Because it's the same idea, right? If you're, if you're substituting pesos for like any other currency, it's the same idea. You're potentially instabilizing the economy, right? But well, let's touch back on the El Salvador point, because this is a point you highlighted in the report that you thought this Bitcoin bonds thing is perhaps maybe one of the more like overlooked or maybe underappreciated developments in the region, and maybe hoping you could expand on that a little bit. Maybe even talk about like just quickly like what the program actually is, what they're trying to do, and I know like Bitfinex has been active. I think even this morning I saw a headline that Bitfinex had issued their first, or issued some sort of like tokenized bond offering in El Salvador to fund like a hotel project or something. The headline just came out this morning. I can't remember exactly what it was, but maybe give some more color on like what that is and like why you're bullish on it.
All right. Well, first, since you mentioned Michael Saylor, I think it's cool to say that Bitcoin bonds are nothing less than actually replicating what Michael Saylor is doing with MicroStrategy, but in a country level, right? So basically what El Salvador is doing is issuing bonds, borrowing money, and saying, hey, I'm going to use, I think it's 1 billion the last time I saw it, and $500 million are going to be to purchase Bitcoin, and the other $500 million are to build the Bitcoin city, which is going to be a city that you have a lot of incentives in regards of taxation, for people that actually own crypto, and they also do a mining facility using geothermal energy. So basically, they are asking the crypto community to fund El Salvador for a crypto project, and for me, this is amazing because there is one thing that people often overlook. It's a concept from the Hayek School of Economics, which is called the Cantillon effect, right? The Cantillon effect is basically the effect of the economic process of issuing more public debt. Every time a country issues more public debt, a certain percentage of this new money created goes back to the financial system for the primary issuers of the debt. So basically, Brazil issues debt through Itaú, Santander, and BTG, whatever. Those guys are going to charge fees on issuing this debt, on managing the money of their clients. So a lot of the new money that is issued goes back to the financial system and actually reinforces this cycle. So everyone is going to say all the time, to politicians, hey guys, maybe you should be issuing more debt, because it's good for the financial system as a whole, right? So I think what El Salvador is doing is a way to lower transaction costs of issuing new debt for countries, and actually freeing some countries to do that on different platforms or different rails, right? Because you can issue not only to your own citizens, you could issue to the broader crypto community. You could issue not only through one or two or a couple major primary offering banks. You could issue through a crypto exchange or maybe more crypto exchanges, or maybe you could do it through an ICO way, right? So it's a totally different way of dealing with the whole funding of nations. And El Salvador is also leading the way, offering citizenship to crypto owners, to crypto investors, right? And I think we're gonna see soon a bunch of digital nomads, just like me, actually willing to have a citizenship of a country that is crypto friendly, because in some countries the crypto taxation is getting just crazy, right? And if you are a crypto owner, or if you work with crypto, it might be rational to do this sort of choice, right?
I'm not like a bought and sold believer in the El Salvador experiment, but like I just find everything that they're doing to be so like it's just unique and refreshing to see somebody trying something different, right? And I think Bukele is like a guy that he's like a guy with a vision. People seem to love him there. I mean, I guess there's different reports about like how how legitimate it's like anytime somebody has like 95% approval in the polls or whatever, it's like you kind of have to be suspect of that, right?
Yeah.
But like people seem to like him, and he's doing some interesting things. Like he seems to have identified like I kind of put him in the same bucket as I put somebody like a Balaji, where it's like, okay, this guy's a little bit out there, but like he seems to be able to see the big picture and where things are going better than like your average like corporate suit type guys can do, right? So I'm like, okay, I think there's something here that like maybe all this stuff isn't going to work as planned, but I feel like he's going to get something right eventually here. But it did seem like, and you noted in the report that despite all this stuff, Bitcoin or crypto adoption in El Salvador is actually quite low still, or like the penetration is still fairly low. So on one hand, the experiment seems to be succeeding. On the other hand, it's like, okay, maybe there's still a lot of work to be done here. Maybe just quickly, like comment on that kind of paradox. Like what's hindering the penetration here in your view?
Yeah. Thanks for pointing out, like, I'm not a huge Bukele supporter. Like, I like what he's doing in terms of the bigger picture and his vision. But of course, like any other leaders, we got a few of his initiatives were not successful, and especially the one regarding the Chivo wallet and the adoption, the grassroots adoption in El Salvador. Like, I totally understand his intention of giving Bitcoin for free and incentivizing the community to download the wallet and use it on a daily basis. But I think like forcing businesses to accept crypto is not really the way. I think the ethos of the crypto community is more like, okay, Bitcoin is going to be legal. You can accept it if you want, right? And not like you gotta have downloaded the app or you gotta accept in your establishment, because what happens, like, and from the report I saw that most of the time a reporter goes to El Salvador and asks to pay in Bitcoin, people just come up with some excuse like, oh, I don't have internet, or the app is not working, or anything just to say that they want to accept Bitcoin at that time. And we got to be also frank, like he started the experiment, and then he had 2 years of a bear market, right? So I totally understand people not willing to accept crypto during a bear market, because why would you accept something that is just falling? But now in the bull market, and he's been pointing that out on Twitter, like how many journalists are actually telling the crypto community that our crypto investments are actually in a profit, because I totally understand that adoption rates in El Salvador, they are going to grow according to the Bitcoin price. Like, it's totally understandable, right? And I think that he could have done a better job doing the adoption strategy, maybe just going slowly, or trying to foster other initiatives like Bitcoin Beach in El Zunco. But he's trying, and that's the thing of being the first mover. You're going to get a lot of things wrong. The most important thing is learning from it and correcting for the next initiatives. I also agree with you that the numbers that come up from El Salvador, we got to be careful analyzing them. It's a bit like the numbers that come up from Venezuela. We can't be really 100% sure of them, but we can track on-chain activity. We can see that tourism grew a lot in El Salvador because of the crypto community willing to go there and see the Bitcoin experiment. And I think what he's doing is like he's actually building the structure for maybe a couple halvings from now. We're gonna see if the experiment was actually a genius envisionment, or maybe it was not that good because of bad execution. It could be both, but I think time will tell. And I'm really cheering for the best. I love El Salvador. The country is great, has great waves, warm weather. It has, for me, it has everything to be, a crypto nomad paradise. But yeah, still, there's a lot of execution things to be done to actually, show if it's going to be a success or, failure.
With Bukele, I feel like it's directionally correct, right? Like where he's going, right? And like, okay, some of these decisions he's made along the way, I'm like, okay, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that ethos, or like this idea of like trying to force people to accept Bitcoin. Like some of these things that were just like, okay, I don't know why he did that. I feel like, maybe he listened to too much of these like Bitcoin bro, like Max Kaiser type guys back in 2021. And, there's some things that maybe I don't agree with, but I feel like directionally, like this is like, if this pans out, El Salvador is going to be like the richest country in the world, in like 20 years, right? So I guess we'll find out one way or another. Anyway, I'd like to touch on just a few other countries I'd like to just get your thoughts on here. I mean, the next one here was Colombia. Obviously, it's one of the big kind of 4 or 5 economies in Latin America, and I think it's a few interesting things that I grabbed from your assessment of Colombia. I mean, mainly it's a big remittance country, obviously. So there's quite a lot of remittance flows coming in, and also there's a surprisingly large number of banks in Colombia that have some sort of partnership with crypto exchanges or crypto companies, which I found to be quite unique and interesting. So hoping maybe you could give us like the quick and dirty analysis of Colombia here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, another driver of crypto adoption by necessity is remittances, and that was actually during the bear market was one of the few, I'll say, activities that were actually remained growing during the past 2 years. Now that we're having the bull market, things are completely different. But when we looked at last year and the year before, remittances were the major driver for adoption in Colombia and Mexico. So it was pretty important. The relationship with Colombian banks and exchanges and crypto companies, it's mostly because of their regulatory sandbox. The Colombian government is doing quite a good job. It's pretty much similar to what Brazil has been doing, but Colombia is, let's say, is one step back. But yeah, their regulatory sandbox requires banks to have a partnership with crypto exchanges or crypto companies to experiment their services in order to have more security and all the KYC, AML policies. So KYC stands for Know Your Customer. AML is anti-money laundering. So in Colombia, because of the whole history of money laundering, drug traffic, whatever, I think they have been really cautious on that. So they really want to get things right on this way. And yeah, I think this is, the probably the highlight. Well, Colombia also has a pretty cool events atmosphere. Like they've had the DevCon in Colombia, which was good to foster the ecosystem. If I'm not mistaken, DevCon was 2022 or 2023. Yeah, 2022. Yeah, but they also had another event last year in Colombia. So those events, they're pretty good because they connect the ecosystem and they bring people together. And from those events, you see a lot of new initiatives coming to flourish. And they're also a way of bridging the gap from foreigners, people from projects that sometimes now in the bull market, those projects are going to have lots of money, grants, whatever, and those grants they usually when you meet someone in person, people feel more trustworthy to give grants and help funding. So it helps a lot bringing funding to Latin America as a whole. So I think that was pretty good for Colombia.
And then you mentioned Mexico on the subject of remittances, and it looks like Mexico, to your point, like crypto remittance volume from between U.S. and Mexico specifically continued to grow, and it looks like Bitso had like a record year in terms of remittances, something like 4.5 billion. Ripple looks like, I know Ripple's still doing some things with like their X Rapid product. I'm not entirely sure what the status of that is. But I mean, what else are you seeing out of Mexico? It's obviously one of the big markets that people are really interested in.
Yeah, Mexico is a big remittance market. I think Ripio and Coinbase are the market leaders there, and actually willing to, let's say, grab this market from the traditional remittance companies. Um, in Mexico, we have a cool thing, which is there is a billionaire, which is Ricardo Pelliego, that really became like a crypto friendly guy. So he invests in crypto. He's talking about crypto on the shows. He got all his businesses to start accepting crypto. So sometimes one man can make a big difference culturally. So he's being a spokesman about the Bitcoin and all the crypto community that I think is going to be good for Mexico in the long term, because he's being the guy willing to educate people and foster these initiatives. Mexico has a CBDC plan. I've been corrected from the Ripple team. I actually there's going to be an updated version of the ebook. The Mexico CBDC is not going to be on Ripple and X Rapid, and they actually changed X Rapid for Ripple payments. That's a new I just got their communique. Yeah, yeah. But Mexico was definitely studying using Ripple for their CBDC. Not sure what's the status on that. There's not a lot of information on what platforms each country is going to choose. I think this is a big competition that has been happening in the background. So people are just going to notice that, or actually put that on the news when things are closed. But yeah, I think Mexico also has their own blockchain association. There's been use cases of soccer players being paid in crypto. So and I'm talking about soccer players because sometimes, like for example, in the case of Brazil, Neymar, when he used the Bored Ape as his profile picture, it just became a NFT frenzy, right? So even though governments and organizations are important, we cannot underestimate the power of memes and celebrities in the crypto industry, right? NFTs became known in Brazilian favelas because of Neymar. So Bitcoin is getting known in Mexico because of Ricardo Peliego from the Salinas group. And maybe, sometime, and he owns like soccer clubs and stuff. So maybe one of those things happen, and then we get more awareness and adoption. People start getting interested for it.
So I tend to see Ricardo Salinas, the Mexican billionaire guy, as like the Michael Saylor of Mexico almost, where he's going around like evangelizing Bitcoin. With the key difference that people had actually heard of him before he started talking about Bitcoin, whereas with Michael Saylor, he was like, no one had ever heard of Michael Saylor before he started talking about Bitcoin, and then he was just this like random software company executive, and then decided to start buying Bitcoin, and all of a sudden he's everywhere, right? But he's had like I don't think you can underestimate the impact that Michael Saylor's had in the U.S. economy in terms of just like Bitcoin evangelism and adoption. And I think, the same with Ricardo Salinas, that he's been such a, strong proponent of this. It's definitely, like he's such an influential guy that people have to listen to what he says. Right.
Yeah, totally.
And then I want to touch really quick on Paraguay also, because Paraguay is it's one of these countries that's always kind of in the news regarding Bitcoin mining. They seem to never be able to make up their mind on whether they want Bitcoin mining in their country or not. And then it's also become a pretty interesting kind of like under the radar place for like kind of like your digital nomad, like passport bro type people, because it's like basically like low tax or like no tax, easy to get residency there with like low taxation regime kind of thing. And you are seeing a steady trickle of like people, migrating there for these types of reasons. So wondering if you could maybe talk a bit about Paraguay and maybe also just more of like Bitcoin mining in the region in general, since that's kind of the main thing happening in Paraguay. But, you can talk what else is happening maybe in Argentina as well on the mining front.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, well, of course, Paraguay, the biggest highlight is, mining companies arriving in the country and expanding operations. They've been doing from the past couple of years, like they've had the first mining facilities, and we were tracking that. And now we just tracked that they are also expanding those mining facilities, which means that, and most of the times that they expand, they just mining facilities like bit farms and some other pretty big ones, and they usually say that they reached an agreement with the Paraguay energy main company. So which means is that those companies, they are being able to get long-term agreements with the Paraguayan energy company, and this means that their sustainability, economic wise, it's kind of granted, right? Because Paraguay has a surplus of clean energy, mostly because of the Itaipu Dam, which makes frontiers with Brazil. That's very important because the deal between Brazil and Paraguay says that any energy surplus that Paraguay has, they're going to sell back to Brazil for kind of a cheap price, right? So what mining companies are doing is that say, hey, Paraguay, I want to buy energy from you. I want to buy from your surplus, and I pay more than Brazil. Basically, from our research, that's what I found. Of course, the rates vary a little bit, but the thing is, they still haven't made their mind on the regulatory side. So it's still, I think, when Paraguay actually passes like clear regulations about it, it's going to become a mining heaven because there's so much opportunity for it. And I think Brazil should also be looking at it because, in a strategic way, this surplus might get shorter year after year because of the Bitcoin mining thing. And also goes back to that we've had this FUD narrative on crypto because of, the Bitcoin energy consumption and the amount of CO2 that puts in the atmosphere. So when we go to places that have clean, abundant, cheap energy, this is like music to a crypto mining company, right? And besides Paraguay, we also have Argentina with some nice crypto mining projects. Specifically, there is one in Patagonia, which caught my attention because it was big. It was, sort of a different. And there's a couple ones happening in Costa Rica. So those are the three places that we found new mining projects being highlighted. And of course, the one with geothermal energy in El Salvador, but that's a different story. We already talked about that. So yeah, what I think in Paraguay is that the lack of regulation is sort of holding back the ecosystem, even though there are already initiatives that are sort of spearheading and sort of starting it. I also remember back in the day, there was a lot of, domestic mining initiatives in Paraguay. People, it was sort of a grassroots adoption of mining because it was actually that cheap that people were actually being profitable. But I think that we're going to see, as we're seeing with the industry, institutional adoption and all that, like those companies that I'm telling that are going to Paraguay, like Bitfarms, they are companies with they're traded in the U.S. Market. So they are big companies with a lot of money to invest. And if their proof of concept goes right, they can just raise more money and deploy this capital in Latin America. And I think this could be really good for the Paraguayan ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, especially now that we're heading into, we're at all-time highs now with Bitcoin, price of Bitcoin, these mining companies will have more capital to deploy. It'll be easier for them to raise. The mining industry it makes very little sense to me because it's like just so obvious how they massively overexpand during the bull markets and then they like massively contract during and it's like, do people like not realize that this is like going to happen? Like, I don't know. Maybe I should have been like a mining consultant or something and charge people with advice. But like, it just seems the whole thing just seems so obvious. Like, but anyway, but the point being, like now that Bitcoin's at 70,000, even with the halvening coming up here in a couple weeks or next week, you still have monetary incentive for these firms to continue investing in mining infrastructure at that price range, right? If you're only getting three and a quarter blocks or 3.25 Bitcoin per block reward instead of 6.5, it's like, well, when Bitcoin's 70K each, that calculation still pans out, right? So I think you're going to see a lot more investment coming in, and honestly, especially in the U.S., like the U.S. just keeps kind of shooting itself in the foot with just like stupid rules around, trying to just throw sand in the gears, making it more difficult for Bitcoin miners and things. So like the life of a Bitcoin miner is kind of a tortured one. It's like they're kind of they're like getting kicked out of China, getting kicked out of it, like all of it. So, but maybe Paraguay's will be a safe haven for them. I guess we'll find out. And maybe just a kind of final question here. Or I have a couple of things that I'd like you to maybe weigh in on, but I'll kind of give you the final word. But you mentioned Venezuela a couple of times. There's a lot of adoption, but it's very difficult to kind of quantify what's actually happening and whatnot, and finding real numbers on that. And then also we've talked about you're obviously Brazilian, and this is the Brazil crypto report. So, would love your thoughts on what's happening in Brazil as well from a high level. And then anything else like from the report that like you found interesting or noteworthy that folks should know about here.
All right, cool. So starting from Venezuela has really high grassroots adoption, really high peer-to-peer transaction rates, of course, due to the hyperinflation that they faced. And also, interesting finding from the report is that they actually rolled back the petro. So they do not have the petro anymore, which was a government issued crypto that was backed by oil reserves. So let's see how this unfolds, because even though because because they issued Petro, it was sort of like, okay, the government is now issuing a crypto, so this might be good. So I believe it just reinforced the adoption cycle in Venezuela. We see a lot of Venezuelan communities on social networks like Hive and others. So Venezuelans are actively looking for opportunities to have crypto income, right? And of course, the whole remittances structure and being cost effective makes a lot of sense for Venezuelans that rely a lot on remittances from overseas, especially in the US. Well, the biggest challenge for adoption in Venezuela, of course, is regulation and the government not being crypto friendly. Let's see until when this happens, because, for example, countries like Cuba are already having a more friendly and positive stance towards crypto, even though still shy. But Cuba is not like Bolivia, which says, "Nah, we don't want any crypto." Cuba is like, "Okay, let's see what this crypto thing is." There's a bit of adoption, so I found that interesting. My first thought was that Cuba would be like Bolivia, just prohibiting crypto, but no, they're actually becoming more open to it. And regards Brazil, I have quite a cool opinion about Brazil. I think for us that work in the crypto industry, being Brazil in 2024 is like being in California in the early 2000s, right? Because California became, the epicenter of, the digital economy and all the ecosystem, the Silicon Valley, and all the story that we already know. And I think Brazil has this potential because we have a lot of problems that blockchain solves, especially problems related to trust and high transaction fees, high cost of credit. There's a lot of implementations of crypto and implementations of the blockchain technology that we can use to improve lives of Brazilians. We have a lot of social currencies in circulation in Brazil. Brazil is the country in the world with the biggest amount of different social currencies, either blockchain based or not blockchain based. Most of them are not blockchain based, but still, it's already a way of the population, especially the vulnerable populations, of actually being in touch with a different kind of currency, and the whole concept of, okay, this is also money, so it's a money that complements the real. It's not a competition between currencies, is more of a collaboration between currencies. So I think this, in the cultural aspect, is pretty important. And what the Brazilian central bank is doing of the whole Drax and the concept of tokenizing the economy, I think that we're doing it in a good pace. Like, it's not that sort of project that slows down because it's based on the government. It's the sort of project that you actually see the development of it. There's a huge opportunity. Like, when we look at the Brazilian Lift Challenge, which was the challenge made by the central bank that actually put together crypto companies with traditional TradFi companies, banks, whatever. We've seen just like so many nice applications. One of them, for example, the DVP, which is delivery versus payment, is basically an application of smart contracts to, for example, purchasing a car. So you buy a car, instead of going to the DETRAN or any state organ, you can just, as you finish your payment, you just get the documentation sent to your wallet with much less bureaucracy than we experiment, transferring any asset in Brazil. So I totally believe on the real world asset tokenization that's going to happen in Brazil. Plugging our economy into EVM compatible chain is going to be for me, is bigger than El Salvador accepting Bitcoin as legal tender. Of course, time will tell if I'm correct or wrong. Brazil has a great community of builders, developers. We have problems that blockchain solves, and our government, surprisingly, we're having a friendly stance on crypto, regardless of which party is in charge, which is quite rare for Brazil, I must say. Of course, we had this new taxation of 15% on foreign exchanges, but I think this is more of a, I don't know. I don't see that as a threat to the development of crypto initiatives. I see that more as a way of the government taxing us more. But it's all right. I don't care. Holding
death and taxes, right? Only certain things in life.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that, yeah, and Brazil has a mix of crypto by adoption and crypto by necessity. Like we've had more than 25% inflation in the since COVID. So we still have a big currency devaluation, but Brazilians, they are really curious about investments that can make you rich overnight, unfortunately or fortunately. So I see that there's a lot. We also have a lot of fraud, scams. Well, that's for the whole Latin American ecosystem. It's very important to do your own research, to certify that you know where you're putting your money at. Education for me is the biggest driver of the whole report. Like when we ask in the survey what would make you invest in crypto, more than 50% of the respondents say, if we had more educational resources. Most of the educational resources, as this one that we're doing right now, is in English, is not in their native language. So having educational resources in Portuguese and Spanish is mandatory for every initiative that is willing to enter LatAm. And we often get that wrong. Like I see a lot of, protocols, initiatives that, I don't know why, but I think they're sort of afraid of the local culture, so they usually send the representatives from somewhere that do not speak Portuguese and English, and Portuguese and Spanish, and those are the guys that actually come here to develop the Latin American market. And for me, this is one of the biggest mistakes, because we have a huge opportunity and big use cases that are going to happen in Brazil and in Latin America as a whole. I think Brazil, because of the regulatory aspect, is probably going to be the leader in that. And yeah, I think we are in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, no, well said, very well said. I couldn't agree more. Which I guess is why I do this podcast and this platform. But yeah, I couldn't have articulated any better. So thank you for that insight. And Luiz, congratulations on this report. I mean, really impressive what you've done. Just super insightful. And thank you on behalf of the community for putting this together. I know it's a lot of work, but someone needs to be doing this and just putting this all together in a way that is packageable and easy to understand, and really helps just kind of break down the state of play across the region. And it's super, super helpful what you're doing. So, how can folks just get in touch if they want to learn more?
Well, my social networks are Luiz Hadad with only one D. I'm not related with the Ministry of Economy. That happened once when I was in a crypto conference. Someone said that I was, related to Fernando Haddad. We might be relatives, but we're not close relatives or any kind. But yeah, my socials are Luiz Haddad and also Sherlock Communications. The website is sherlockcoms.com. You can download the crypto report there for free. It's a great pleasure to do this work and share with the crypto community. I'm also available, to talk on more podcasts, participate on events. It's always a pleasure to collaborate with the community, and I think it's really important to showcase what we have in Latin America in order to bring more projects, investments, opportunities for Latin Americans as a whole. And yeah, we just have so much talent. Like it's just hard to grind and actually dive in and see all the hidden gems that we got. And the last one to mention is that Ecuador and Guatemala, they used crypto to safeguard their election process. I didn't know that before doing the report. If I was just on my daily life, I probably wouldn't know that. So we are actually being creative and using crypto in so many ways that I highly encourage you guys to see the report. Please, if there's any information that needs to be updated, or you do not agree with me, please reach out, share with me. It's a live working process. Like I put in a lot of work. It was 5 months of work to have this report, but we know the crypto community and the crypto industry is a highly living organism, so we got to update it every now and then. Please let me know, especially you, Aaron, that you're probably one of the guys that spends more time studying the ecosystem. It's a great pleasure to be here sharing this insights with you, but feel free to reach out anytime, and it's a great pleasure to participate in your podcast.
Luiz, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really great having you here. And thanks to everyone for watching, and we will see you next time.